Quantified self. I've been quantifying myself in some ways for quite a while. I originally started to do this in earnest when I read some scientific literature about how some of the painful, degenerative, horrific end parts of the human experience could be delayed, because I'm quite a procrastinator, by caloric restriction. And that just involved eating less and paying attention to how much you weigh. So the idea was to lose 10% of my body weight starting from my set point. And so I started working on this and did it. I used to be a little healthier looking. My wife was kind of shocked. I looked kind of, this is my wife Lisa, that I looked kind of unhealthy that way. This thing's running out of batteries.
So I had already had a little bit of insight into Joe's self-tracking tendencies, and the first time I had this sort of clue into this aspect of him was during the birth of our first son in 1998, when during my contractions, instead of holding my hand and supporting me and hugging me, he was off in the corner putting the time between contractions into a spreadsheet. So that gave me a little bit of a warning, and the warning was, okay, this could be the way our relationship goes, or I could join him.
To wit, in 2008, I took her to this crazy, weird, esoterical gathering at Kevin's house, the first Quantified Self meetup, which was a lot of fun, and I think it really helped. We're still together. Okay, that was 2.5 years ago, and since then it's been growing a lot, and a lot of us have been quantifying ourselves in various ways. Look at all of us. It's great. Why are we doing this? So one of the reasons is for a health baseline. What that is let's say you're tracking your health. You're tracking what your health is like now, so that later if it changes, you'll know if it becomes abnormal in some way. If you know what your blood pressure is, typically, or temperature is a good example. If you know your temperature normally, then you'll know what it means to have a fever if it just increases slightly above that.
So a personal example of that for us. A couple of years ago, I was wondering about some of my hormone levels, so I made an appointment with an endocrinologist. And at the appointment, Joe whipped out his computer, and lo and behold, we had tracked 10 years of my menses, which the endocrinologist's jaw just dropped. Do you have 10 years of your menses data? That's going to help a lot. And in fact, it did.
Another use was as an autobiographical record. Some people like to save everything about themselves, the drawings they did in preschool and all of their fingernail clippings and the time that every single beat of their heart beat, and it's just another kind of obsession. So that's kind of geeky. But I think that we're also into that from, a lot of us are into this from another sort of perspective, because we like cool tools. We like to figure out how to do all this quantification, because it's we're not very good at it yet, socially, technologically, and it's interesting to try to develop tools like that. And a lot of us, I think, are pretty geeky, and myself included, trying to persuade other people to get kind of geeky too. And I think that it's, as Kevin points out in his recent book, that at the beginning of every big technological movement, there are the people coming together as a community to first be pretty much just obsessed with the technology itself, and then only later does it start to become kind of normal that it's just the application of it that people are paying attention to. So here we are at the beginning. It's really fun.
So I went to my next slide a little early, but the point that I wanted to make is that behind all this geekiness, all this geek cred that everyone's getting, all of you are getting for tracking, by tracking, I suspect that there's a desire that most of us share, and that's the desire for change in one direction or another. You want to lose weight, you want to gain weight, you want to get more efficient with your time, you want to relax more, you want your brain functionality to be increased, or you want to be able to meditate and maintain your attention. So I would hazard a guess that change, or the desire for change, is behind most people's tracking efforts. So, on that count, I think there's an elephant in the room. And I think the elephant is, to what end all this tracking? All this work that we're doing to track all these various components of our life, is it making any difference for any of us?
So for me personally, I started tracking my weight, for instance, and then my weight went down. Okay. I also was reading some scientific literature that seemed to suggest that I think we're going to do two people's work. I read some literature that suggested that that in terms of alcohol intake.
Just do a couple more minutes, because there's 6 others.
Oh, well, that's what Kevin said. 15 minutes. So that's what we wrote.
Speak really quickly.
There's scientific evidence that if you drink alcohol, you should, at my age and gender, you should drink between 1 and 2 drinks per day. And that's optimum for health. And so I thought, well, I wonder what I'm doing. And so I started tracking. It was a little over 2. And so then after doing that tracking, my alcohol intake went down into a healthy range. So there again, tracking, I got the change I wanted. And so that we have correlation and therefore causation, right? So that's scientific proof.
And I just add that for myself personally, even though I track a lot of things and I've been tracking for a long time, I really have no clue if it makes any difference. But I keep doing it because I believe that with those spreadsheets, at some point in the future, someone's going to help me learn how to be a better geek and be able to correlate those pieces of data.
Okay, so one of the things about trying to figure out whether it does help or it does have any effect, I wanted to see if anybody studied whether self-quantification can actually help you. And so I got on PubMed and started searching around and finding the papers. In fact, any papers on anything related to self-measurement at all, like only less than 100, just counting blood pressure. But then I was thinking, what's kind of like it, and has that been studied? And it occurred to me that self-quantification is kind of a lot like journaling, like keeping a diary. A lot of similarities.
So some of the similarities between tracking and journaling are that they're both written records, either on computer or on paper. They're very self-focused or subject-focused, and also they're guided by the subject's interest. They are recursive. There's the possibility for consistent iteration and improvement, and they can be mined for data. Also, they tend to track a particular time, a linear time track.
So, looking at journaling, oh my God, there are people who have been paying attention to this for a long time, and there are thousands of papers with very direct journaling keywords in the title.
So, what does this research tell us on journaling? One of the things, One of the things it tells us is that journaling, even for small amounts of time, 15 minutes of writing down your experience, can impact your mental and your physical health. Another thing it can do is there's been studies that have shown that writing down any kind of piece of information can strengthen your ability to learn from it. So I think that we have a lot to learn from the constructivist learning theory. Learning theory is the thing that really explains why writing, and I believe also tracking, can make a difference to us. So if you look at Kolb's cycle of learning, I think that can clarify it a little bit. So the cycle talks about doing an action, thinking about an action, or reflecting on an action, and then conceptualizing abstractly about the action, redesigning the experiment, and then going through the cycle again. And I think the piece that we're looking at is this one right here, reflective observation. And this relates to what David was saying earlier. The reflection is, journaling is a reflective action, and tracking information is a reflective action.
A lot of people don't get all the way to the next section where they're actually conceptualizing about their data, because sort of like the from computer science we learned about read-only memory and random access memory, that kind of thing. And a lot of people, I've noticed in the quantified self world, myself included for some data sets, practice the write once, read never. One of the things that disturbs me, however, is that there are a lot of really substantive differences between self-quantification and journaling, and such that I think we need to study self-quantification in its own right. I won't list them out one by one, but we'll post this on the website so you can look at it because we're going to have time. And so, what I'm suggesting is that we quantify self-quantification, that we actually study the effects of studying yourself quantitatively, and leave you with this idea that, leave you with this idea that originally, as Kevin points out in his book again, as you can tell, I'm really enjoying it and reading it right now. Originally, language came from something that you use to talk to other beings, to communicate to other beings. And then once this tool of language was around, it turned out that you could use it to talk to yourself. And that created this whole self-awareness thing, and this whole recursion thing, and so that's very uniquely human. And Chomsky defines recursion as the most important characterizing property of being a human. And now that people started getting more quantitative in their communication with other people and more regimented and careful about that, and that gave rise to another very interesting delta in human development and the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. And what I'm seeing now, as part of this quantified self movement, which is taking off right now, and spreading to cities all over the world, is that people are starting to be quantitative in a conversation with themselves now that we have this tool. And what's going to happen from that? I think that could be pretty interesting. And I'm looking forward to being part of it. I'm really glad you're part of it, and I really want you to help us study it. Thank you.
Questions, and while they are questioning, let's see, we got, let's sit up here. So
there are 7,210 references to biofeedback on PubMed. That's the word you're looking for.
Great, yeah, biofeedback. I will look at that. Any other questions?
Yeah. You mentioned wanting to change. How do you determine what you want?
Well, that's based on desire for me, and so far my relationship with desires is they just sort of emerge. I just feel them. I want something and I try to get it.
And I'd also say that your wants come out of that recursive, self-awareness that grows out of journaling, and that's the cycle where the journaling, the reflection, and then the redesigning allows you to know what it is you want next for your next experiment.
I just wanted to mention a very geeky journaling tool out there. It's called 750 Words. It's just a blank page, website, blank page to write your stuff. But it also does quantification over time, has some nice shortcuts for putting in scalar values, how happy you feel on a 1 to 10 scale, and anything you want to measure along with sort of the quality and amount of your writing. So if you want to quantify over your journals.
We'll take one more question.
Do you ever fear that tracking is just like a complicated way of deceiving yourself into like not actually dealing with certain subjects?
Do I have a feeling that tracking is a way of deceiving myself and doing what?
Have you ever had the suspicion that what you're tracking, you're setting the parameters up to kind of ignore certain other things and really just get what you want out of it?
Not that I've noticed, but maybe I am, but I'm ignoring it.
All right, well, thanks, that was great. We appreciate it.